Alright everyone, I figured it was time to do a video on the Archive Everything movement. It's Archive Activism. That's the moniker that we need for this generation of tech, because increasingly this is an effective method to fight some of the propagandistic, phony voices within the legacy media. And elsewhere, some of the craptivistic groups as well, they do the same thing. What has happened is this. What's happening is that in this increasingly competitive atmosphere, where they have to compete with weird side of YouTube, among other things, tabloid rags like the New York Times, the Atlantic, CNN, and Fox, and Breitbart, and all of these other various groups, and they're not all left-wing, it has nothing to do with politics. At this point, they're all doing the same shit. They've begun to essentially clickbait, and what they do is they create articles that are deliberately antagonistic on a political or social level, number one. That's not a new strategy, it's just more prevalent now. They try to antagonize. They try to lure people in, and then they try to get ad revenue out of them or use paywalls. However, there's not a paywall developed yet, as far as I know, that can't be overridden by an archive site. And so here's an easy solution. There are two very good sites. I tend to use archive and the dot whatever changes routinely. Go to archive.today, or there's also a link in the description. Use this from now on, and some people have taken my advice already, and I do appreciate those of you who are doing it, sending me news tips. Sending them in archive form does help me. And then there's also the Internet Archive, the Wayback Machine. What you can do is, before you spread a news story, if it's propagandistic, if you deem it to be clickbaity, or it's coming from a turd network, like, again, CNN, Fox, any of these other legacy media networks, craptivistic groups, a Right-Wing Watch, Vox, Vice, some of these other morons. If it's coming from any of these groups, if it's not coming from a truly independent source, run it through an archive first and give people the archived link. And you can do this, and what this does is that they get the article, it's been archived, so number one, they can't selectively edit it later. They can't go back and do damage control if there's a huge error in their article. It helps keep them accountable, number one. Number two, unlike a screenshot, it's actually more accurate. I believe there are ways to fake archives, but it's the average person's, I don't think, going to go through the steps. And then number three, it also allows you to share it to a large audience without giving them ad revenue or paywall subscriptions and stuff like that. See, what's happened, like when I do my analysis, I talk about the news, current events. Sometimes I link to articles. They're always archived. If I didn't, I shudder to think how many hundreds of thousands of dollars in free publicity some of these networks could have made altogether. It'd be a substantial sum of money because of the number of people watching my material. I see content creators that have audiences that dwarf mine. You're getting 1 million views every day, and you're sharing out articles from the New York Times. You're helping make their money for them, despite the fact that in many cases these people are direct competitors of the legacy media network. Some of them even do citizen journalism. Tim Pool, for example. Tim Pool does citizen journalism, but I believe that he doesn't usually archive articles. He should. You're giving money to your competitors, dude. I mean, I'm not trying to throw shade, but you're giving them, your audience's money, at least in a roundabout way in some cases. Some of these sites even paywall. Like the New York Times used to just be the New York Times and wasn't really a problem. They didn't even, I think, have ads in some cases. I see a different internet from the average person because I use ad blocking. And I know for phones it's more difficult, I guess, to do that or something. I don't use the internet on phones for a reason. I use a good old desktop experience and love it. This helps greatly with security and helps with me not giving money to the legacy media or Facebook. Anyway, you've got an audience, Tim Pool's audience. I don't know how many fucking views the dude gets in a day, but it's quite formidable. If he puts out a link to like Vox or something, they can count on getting at least some tens of thousands of clicks off that because he's got a huge audience. But if you archive it, they don't get shit. The archive page gets the clicks. They don't get any ad revenue. They don't get to lure anybody into trying to pay their paywall blood money. They don't get jack shit. It looks worse on the website rankings because remember, when it's aggregating the clicks on their site, if it's the archive page, it's not going to their site. It's going to a snapshot of their site. Isn't that wonderful? And so I've been doing this for 4 years now or so. I've gotten like 200 million collective views in that period of time. That's a lot of potential clicks. Now, of course, it doesn't mean that many clicks on article links. I'm not saying that, but it's a substantial number. It's got to be in the millions, easily. So, there are some people out there, you should pressure your favorite content creators to do this. It is good for the creator community. If just let's say that the top few hundred commentators cross-platform, the leading voices in alt tech, the leading voices on YouTube as far as sort of the socio-political side of things, politics, political predictions and stuff. The cat's singing right now. Couldn't wait till the video's done. Sorry about that. If just a few hundred people were to collectively do that, can you goddamn imagine the number of total viewers every single day that relatively small number of people actually encompasses? That's a huge, huge amount of support. You're giving free money to groups that are actively creating articles about how we should be banned. And it's funny because in reverse, they're actually sort of biting the hand that feeds them, because a lot of these people don't archive everything, or anything in some cases, and actually feed them free ad clicks, and yet they still declare that they're evil, they're fascistic, extremist, they're conspiracy theorists, and should be deplatformed across the world. Think of the children. Well, yeah, I do. That's why I want to stop the legacy media, because these people are haggard and ineffective, number one. Number two, lying, scheming rats. And number three, they directly defame people like me, claiming that we're extreme, despite the fact that we just want to fucking make a YouTube video. They'll say that some gamer, like remember when JonTron was called a Nazi? And the dude just does like funny shit and topical gaming shit at this point, and has millions of fans, and they tried to claim that he was the next Goebbels or something. It's like the most dishonest shit ever. I think that we need to spank their dog and punish them, so to speak. I think we need to punish the legacy media. This is the only real effective way to do it. You can't argue for them to be deplatformed, then you become your own worst enemy. You can't argue for censorship. And individually, of course, even if you're like doing analysis, so you did pay them their paywall blood money. By the way, you don't have to do that. Just use archive.today. It'll work. You're giving them their money. You can't really say, well, I'm going to end my subscription to the New York Times. Okay, they don't care about your $1 a month or whatever the hell it is. I wouldn't even pay them I wouldn't let them pay me to have a subscription to the New York Times myself, but that's just me. But if you encourage everybody else to archive everything, that's the other part. Let's say that you've got an audience, you reach 100,000 people a day. That's a pretty decent audience, or 1 million people a day or something. You've got a decent-sized audience. You archiving the news links matters. You're potentially draining thousands of clicks a day from these sites that you're linking to. That's good. Even better is when you announce to your fans that you're doing it and tell them to do the same. Don't front me articles without archiving them. Always archive before spreading them around. Dude, if a few hundred of the main commentators were to make this a sort of sub-movement and encourage this, their revenue would drop like a rock overnight. Some of these sites are already cutting staff. They already have financial problems. A small reduction in their overall income from ad revenue would break some of these sites entirely, showing that the creator community is capable of topical organization in order to retaliate against defamation. That's what I'm suggesting. Yes, I'm suggesting that we make this a sort of sub-movement to punish these sites. Because they've begun to clickbait. They're projecting, for one thing, when they talk about YouTube, oh, these YouTubers are incentivized to make weird titles and cover spooky dooky taboo topics that we wish only we could cover. Yeah, absolutely. So are you. So are you. All of the time you do this. One person writes a viral article about how YouTube is a nest for the alt-right or something, and everyone else suddenly is a genius and an expert on the same topic and has 5 or 6 opinion pieces aboard explaining how absolutely that's the case. And then you have a few contrarians, of course, who say it's not the case, and they're technically clickbaiting too, which is the funny part. We need some degree of accountability and fairness in reporting. If you want to call yourself authentically a press site, why aren't you acting like a press? Why instead are you acting just like the crazy old dude on the corner who yells at people about aliens? Because really, the tabloid legacy media more resembles that than the weird side of YouTube at this point. Weird side of YouTube is, hey, they've got earthquake machines and harp and orgone and stuff like that. And it's like, it's the same shtick from the 2000s. It's ultimately a little boring and predictable now. It's not quite as fun as when the Inner Earth, sort of the Angel Fire sites were in their prime. But the legacy media had been more straight reporting for a very long time and has succumbed to clickbait. In closing, I would say one last thing. It's very funny to see them try to blame Trump for this happening. They chose to act like this because of their money, because they wanted more money and because they were being outcompeted by people who were clickbaiting online, admittedly. But now their only answer is to try to defame and deplatform people who generally aren't clickbaiting at all, are not fanatics, and are doing nothing wrong, who have had a long-term presence because they're scared. They're losing money because they don't know how to internet. They don't know how to meme. Now, the left can't meme. Neither can right-wing legacy media sites. These people don't know what they're doing. They get outcompeted by people whose budget is $200 for a webcam and a microphone. That's what's happening, and they're pissed. Archive everything. Before you spread it anywhere on the internet, run it through an archival site. There are 2 very good ones in the description. I'm sure that there are others that are simply less searchable. Sometimes the sites go down. Just use the other if one of them is not working. Works just fine. Works like a charm. Doesn't take any longer to load the site. It takes you like 10 seconds to run it through the archive, and then it's done, and then you're all fine. I wonder how they make their money, actually. Maybe it's just provided as a sort of service. I don't know. It must not be that expensive because, it's taking basically a snapshot of the site and storing it for a while. I don't even know if there's some sort of age range for storage on these sites, but at some point I think they'd run out of room. If too many people use them, probably they'd have to start charging for their archival services, which could, I guess, be a problem years down the road. But for right now, if we can attack the legacy media and their lies, their propaganda, by spanking them, by taking away some of their money, good. I think it's a wonderful idea. That's about all. Peace out.